see who's making the statement. This guy is Syria Joseph, and he is had been a public servant who represented the highest seat of Indian judiciary, which is the Supreme Court. But does he stand? Does he stick to what he is claiming that the other party is doing, that the opposition, that is us, are doing? There are so many speeches online where he boasts publicly that his religion, his faith to Jesus, his Christian faith comes before the nation and his service to the nation. And this is the same person who always put religion before law in the most crucial cases, I must say. And one of the first things that come to mind when you talk of Syria Joseph is how he went ahead and supported JNU students who had protested against the execution of parliamentary convict Afzal Guru. And he also made several statements on several different platforms saying that these protests should not be considered as anti-national. The question is, if somebody attacks an outsider, somebody attacks the entire building that actually represents the democracy of Bharat, and people are protesting against his execution, that person's execution, if that is not anti-national, what is? I don't understand. Then to protect his religious denomination, Catholic denomination, he was actually found in the narco test lab trying to tamper with the evidence in Mr. Abhaya's case. And he, for as long as the case went on, and when he had the authority, he put all kinds of hurdles in case just to save his fellow Catholics, knowing pretty well that they were guilty of killing Abhaya. And not much relevant, but this person is also repeated for leaving cases unresolved throughout his career. About 1,000 cases were left without judgment. The reason I'm making this point is to not expose, but just to display that what came first to him. Was it his service to the nation or his religion? And then we have another person, a very authoritative position, a responsible position, supposedly. This is Jalal Austin. I haven't put names here on my slides deliberately because these people, these are the face of, I must say, anti-nationalism. And they could be anybody. So this is the IMA chief, Indian Medical Association chief, John Austin Jalal. He made some statements like he came to that position of authority. He said that it's very good. It's my opportunity to carry on the principles of Christian healing in the medical college as a principal of this college, as a professor in this college. And then he also says we need more Christian doctors to work in secular institutions, mission institutions, and medical colleges. And then he also talked about how it was the church that was taking care of the sick during the pandemic, and government has not come forward to support them. And who is telling all these things to? A foreign Christian magazine. And he's always seen giving interviews to these magazines and always trying to slay mud at the government of India, sometimes the culture of India, because he associates Sanskrit language with Hinduism. He says Sanskrit is Hinduism, Ayurveda is Hinduism, which is what the government of India is doing because they want to make it one nation, one system of medicine, and one religion. The question is, who is trying to compare or bring in religion into state or secular affairs? It is them always. So they cannot leave religion out of their profession, out of their service to the nation, and then blame, the opposition, saying that the other party saying that they are the ones who are trying to relate patriotism or service to nation, careers, or professions with religion. And then if those two people are holding responsible positions at the national level, we have some very, very disturbing statements from people at national level like Andhra and Tamil Nadu, which are the most happening places for Christianity. So we have people giving out statements like, how many husbands does Bharat Mata have? 3 crore. 3 crore deities are Bharat Mata's husbands. And this guy actually heads a proselytizing company. That's what I call the Christian organization. And then there's another guy who actually is a founder of Bible College, which is again a factory that turns out pastors. And he says the Indian flag is just a piece of cloth, and it must hang its head in shame in front of the flag flying outside my college. And people are mad to salute to it. And then he says national anthem sounds like the braying of a donkey. I'll get in a minute to why these people are important and why and how what they say is impactful and influences a section of Bharat population. And then this guy also works for the same college, Bible College. He said very recently, break India into two and give us one part. And then we'll not have anything to do with you. We will not bother you. We will not, for example, vandalize your temples, which is happening a lot in Andhra these days. And then another guy from Andhra, he says Britishers are spiritual fathers. It is to them we owe everything. We must be indebted to them for everything. What have the rishis and munis done to us? They were just illiterate, superstitious, uncivilized primitives. And then this guy, he says idol worship is same as prostitution. Tsunami is God's revenge against idol worship. And India is poor because of idol worship. This guy also has ties with another very big, disturbing movement in India, but I'll get to that in a minute. So these people, what they say, definitely impacts, like I said, a big section of Indian population. And these are not statements made on their personal YouTube channels. These were the statements that were made in public speeches that, and these speeches went viral. So the big question we must be asking today in response to Syria Joseph's lamentation that we are attempting, there's a sinister attempt to ban them as anti-nationals. I would ask if this example that I just shared, if that is not anti-India, those are not anti-India statements, what are? I would say anti-nationalism doesn't have a different look and sound, doesn't wear a different attire, it doesn't stand out from people like us. It looks exactly like these people and sounds exactly like their words. That's anti-nationalism. I would say we don't need any more examples, and we will straight away go into where these ideas come from. And like I said, who are these people? This guy who commented on the national anthem and national flag is the founder of a Bible university that churns out dozens of pastors every year. And Syriac Joseph is retired representative of Bharat's judiciary. And this guy is president of Indian Medical Association, who compared Sanskrit, who said Sanskrit is Hinduism, should Sanskrit and Ayurveda to take over English language and modern medicine. And then there's another guy, the guy who said, how many husbands does Bharat Mata have? He runs a popular YouTube channel that has a subscription, several tens of thousands. And then this guy who said divide Bharat into two, he's also a pastor and a director of Bible University. And this guy who said Britishers are our spiritual fathers, it is to them that we should be indebted and not to the sages or not to our sages who gave us Shastras. He actually runs a politics enterprise and runs a YouTube channel, and a lot of Christian youth follow him blindly. This guy is from Tamil Nadu, runs a proselytizing enterprise in Tamil Nadu, and he's famous and widely followed pastor. Now, sensationalism is not a new or a modern concept to Christianity. It didn't happen in the 21st century. It has been there for as long as Christianity existed. In fact, Christianity is the reason, the sensationalism, the idea to separate, is the reason Christianity is born in the first place. So it has both a theological basis and a historical precedent. Now, what is a theological basis? If you look at the Old Testament, the idea of a chosen race is strongly incorporated into the Old Testament, because the God of the Old Testament says that he commands his people to separate themselves from non-believers just to retain their sanctity. And when you come to New Testament, now the Bible has both New Testament and Old Testament. I don't think I'll have to go into that. But when you look at the New Testament, that is the beginning of the time of Jesus. So New Testament, the very first Messiah believers, back then were not called Christians. It would be, I think, 100 CE. For that group of people who believed in a resurrected Savior, were called Christians. So in the very beginning stages, when Christian religion was still in the was a small fringe group, Jerusalem had two groups of Messiah believers. One was the Aramaic-speaking Jewish converts who recently got converted to the cult of the resurrected Savior, and the other group was the Greek-speaking diaspora Jewish converts called the Hellenists. Now, the Hellenists began speaking against the law and Jewish God. And this was a punishable offense. Knowing very well that this was a punishable offense, they still went ahead and spoke, because they had a sense of we are purer than the rest. The chosen people separating themselves. It comes from the Old Testament, and it actually came to fruition in the New Testament. So even though they knew that it was a punishable offense under the Jewish law, and the punishment was death by stoning, they still go ahead and speak against the law and Jewish God, the law of that nation, and against the deity that that nation holds dear. So a believer called Stephen gets stoned to death by Jewish law for this very reason. And other Hellenists succeed at this point, move out of Jerusalem, and they take their religious beliefs with them, and that is how conversions began at that point. And the prelude to conversions of the rest of the nations around Jerusalem is secessionism. And there is a verse, there are several verses, but this is very apt to what I'm talking about, which says, "Come out from among unbelievers and separate yourselves from them. Don't touch their filthy things, and I will welcome you." So these are words allegedly spoken by Jesus in the New Testament. He is specifically saying, separate yourselves, because you are pure, you are a chosen race, separate yourselves from everything that is filthy. Now, what is filthy according to the Bible? Idol worshippers, because idol worshippers are he equates, I mean, several verses, several writers in the Bible equate idol worshipping with prostitution. So that is filthy. So separate yourselves from those that are filthy and do filthy things, and I will welcome you. That is when I will embrace you. That is when I will welcome you into my kingdom, into my fold, whatever he means there. So that's a very, very specific statement that he has made, asking anybody who wants to be embraced by Jesus to separate themselves from the rest. You see where the whole idea comes from. Now, the historical precedent is, if you look at the first century, the birth of Christianity itself comes out of this idea. A group of Jews secede from Judaism to form a new religion. Much later, anti-Semitism by later Christian generations, that is Protestants, comes about, and that results in the Holocaust of Jews, the mother race from which Christianity secedes. The reason I'm putting this out there is, anytime a group separates from the mother group, they cannot go live by themselves practicing their version of purity. They have to abuse, they have to demonize, and in extreme situations, they have to annihilate the mother race from which they seceded. And if you look at the 5th century, so Eastern Schism is called, a group of Christians within the Eastern Orthodox Church of the Eastern Roman Empire, which is, at this point, the Roman Empire was split into Eastern and Western. So a group of Christians secede from the rest of the Orthodox Church. So this is a secession happening from within the group. Same group. And in the 11th century, we see East-West Schism. The Eastern Christians, led by the church at Constantinople, secede from the mother church, the Western Church, led by the church in Rome, which is now called the Roman Catholic Church at Vatican. And 16th century is Protestantism. Again, Martin Luther protests and secedes from the Catholic Church, which is the mother church. So time and again, this is a pattern that you see, that anytime a group thinks that we are purer than them, we have to form a separate, we have to retain a sanctity, a purity, they secede from the mother group. And like I said, they don't keep quiet after secession. They have to abuse and make sure that the mother source is annihilated, and they'll do everything in their capacity to see that happens. So I use the word schism. So just to give you an idea of what schism is, it was used in the early church to describe those groups that secede from the mother church and establish rival churches. And if you look at the Christian history, there have been many, many more secessions. I've just talked about 4 here, the major ones. Throughout Christian history, there have been many secessions, and those secessions resulted in creation of about 40,000 brands of Christianity in 2,000 years, based on just one book and one school of thought. So what I see here, secession is seen as a pursuit of a God-given liberty. So they take it as their birthright. They take it as their duty towards their religion. And continuing on historical precedent, the most effective inspiration for modern Christians, Indian Christians, for Christians, the Indian Christians come from the history of their spiritual fathers, alleged spiritual fathers, that is the Europeans. A group of Christians called separatists. They call themselves separatists. Separatists seceded from the Anglican Church, which is the Church of England, which was the mother church. They sailed all the way from Holland to America, which they colonized by annihilating natives, just to establish a supposedly purer version of Christianity. So this, as I said, is a pattern. Anytime they see that, this could be, we are the chosen people, we have to continue the purity, we have to continue the sanctity. So at that point, it's seceded. And much later in America, after they settled there, smaller groups seceded from the very first Christian settlers, forming into different denominations that we hear of today: Baptists, Presbyterians, Lutherans, Methodists, Pentecostals, and many, many other subgroups. So seeking purity through secession has marked Christian religious history. And when I talk about these denominations, I want to make a point here that these are not different schools of thought shooting off into very religious philosophies, unlike Sanatana Dharma. I mean, you could come back and ask me, there are several offshoots of Hinduism. So what is the problem with the denominations or secessions? Now, if you look at Christianity, the denominations of Christianity, they are all based on the same school of thought, unlike Sanatana Dharma's different schools of thought. And that thought is that Jesus is the one true God, and in Him alone is salvation, and the Bible is the only true scripture. This is very different. I mean, I don't want to get into the philosophical aspects of it, but this is very different from the different school of thought in how the different school of thought came about in Sanatana Dharma. And all these divisions within Christianity are the result of internal disagreements on some of the very core aspects of Christianity, the Christian religion. If you look at different schools of thought, at least in the Astic schools of thought, they all agree on the core aspects, the reincarnation, karma, dharma, and all those aspects. But in Christianity, the disagreements are on as core an issue as where does the Holy Spirit proceed from? Does it come from the Father? Or does it come from the Son, which is Jesus? Or something like, was Jesus divine or was he just a man? So these are some of the core issues that they disagree on, and that is when they went out of the mother group and formed their group, and based on what they believe to be true about the Christian religion. And as I've already mentioned, every time one group secedes from the mother for theological reasons, it claims to be purer than the mother. And the seceded group begins to demonize the mother, and this results in a discord and chaos in society. Now I explain as we go forward. Now, how does conversion lead to cessation? You might ask me, it's all divine. I mean, because they have experienced the love and compassion of Jesus in some miraculous manner, that is when conversions happened. But that's not what is happening here. So for that, we have to understand what conversion is and how conversions happen. So what is conversion? In the general sense, it's a shift from what one believes to be true about God, the relationship of the self with God, the destiny of one's soul and atma, soul/atma. So this is in broad sense what conversion is. Now, when does conversion happen, especially in the Indian context? I would say 99.99% of the times, conversion to Christianity happens when one person preaches about Christianity to another person. It's never a self-discovery, self-learning. So nobody discovers for themselves that Bible preaches about salvation of God or salvation through Jesus, unless and until someone tells about Christianity or about the Bible, conversions don't happen. So when I say preaches about Christianity, I have to also define what preaching is again in the Indian context. The act of pointing out that a person's current beliefs are a path to eternal hell. So the consequences of not converting or the consequences of one's current beliefs are going to give that person eternal hell. So the act of pointing this out is preaching. Shaming a Hindu for his her traditions, cultural and religious practices, a big part of preaching in India. Then the process of persuading a Hindu to abandon his her beliefs, traditions, and identity. Its preaching is also teaching a Hindu to demonize everything that she has abandoned. And then it's the act of indoctrinating the potential convert that his her former religion is a reason for his or her current misery, financial stress or health-related issue, domestic, marital. So the current misery can be mitigated only by converting Christianity. So this is in the broader sense what preaching entails in India. So there are two things. As long as you're talking about, a person is talking about the goodness of Christianity or the love and compassion of Jesus, that's fine. But preaching is just not about talking about the goodness of Christianity. It is mostly, I would say more than 50%. It is to point out why a Hindu must abandon, and in the process, they demonize everything that Hindu does. Now, what does conversion do to a person? It creates identity crisis, both in terms of his or her consciousness, and it gives rise to a conflict, an internal conflict. And it severs, when a person converts or is trying to convert, he severs the familial bond with those that haven't converted, because their idol worshipping is equated with prostitution. And this is where preaching begins. Every preaching begins with why idol worshipping has to be abandoned. And the moment they say that, they point to the verses, I'm talking about the preachers, they point to the verses in the Bible that call idol worshipping as prostitution. So when a person converts, the first thing the first difference that he sees between himself and the rest in his family that haven't yet converted is they're idol worshippers and he is not. And then severing the familial bond results in loss of obligation towards family. Like they cannot attend funerals, they cannot attend any Rats, Hindu festivals, and they cannot partake in any of those events that have pujas, which is basically every event in Hinduism. So there is a loss of obligation, which in turn results in severing of societal bond that is rooted in families and family events in India, and which in turn results in severing of civilizational bond. So when a person converts, so he is slowly distancing himself from first his family, and through his family, the obligation that he has as a family member. And by that, he is severing his societal bond because he is in that society, he's in the Hindu society, he distances from there. And through this, the entire civilizational bond is lost, the cultural bond is lost. And when this happens, simultaneously, while this is happening, he's establishing a new bond. And towards that new bond, his loyalty is shifted. his or her loyalty is shifting. And then at this point, he is, and just get this, all through this journey, conversion doesn't happen overnight. So all through this journey, the church is playing a very important role in all those, in doing all those things that I just said. I said, like preaching, what is the person preaching to a Hindu? So all these 5 points are happening simultaneously in this journey, and which results in not just this, but also establishing a bond with the new traditions, and at the same time feeling shameful about what he had been for all these years or generations. And this shame inspires aversion to his or her religious traditions. So what happens at the psychological level? What happens at a psychological level? There is a shift in philosophy of that person. I'm a different person now. My purpose is different now. Because again, part of preaching is also to inculcate a new purpose in that person. And what is that purpose? That is to serve my God, to please my God. Remember, God said he will embrace only when one distances oneself from all the filthy things. And filthy things, again, are idol worshipping, which translates to Hinduism. So my purpose now is to serve my God, which is to please my God, which will happen only when I detest my past traditions, detest my past Hindu traditions. So I have no obligation to the family or the society that doesn't serve the same God as I. I am to condemn the native traditions because they are an abomination to my God. I am against everything that my God is against. I am with Jesus' army. Okay, this is a very important thing. Every Christian thinks that he has enrolled himself upon conversion. He has enrolled himself into Jesus' army, and the Jesus army thinks that they are constantly at war with the dark forces of this world. And one of the first and foremost dark forces of this world are idols and idol worshipping, which again translates to the belief and culture of our civilization. So the person thinks I'm in Jesus' army, and Jesus and the army is constantly at war with the beliefs, and I'm also constantly at war with these beliefs and culture. And I will do everything in my capacity to defeat these forces or annihilate them. So just imagine if we were talking of only one person, one conversion. But imagine when this number increases in a particular region. When I say this number, I mean people with this kind of shifted philosophy, shifted purpose. When that increases in a particular region, what happens? The church has automatically gained control over that region. And what happens when the church gains control over a region? It begins to meddle in the affairs of the state. What happens when the church meddles in the affairs of the state? Takeover of education, entertainment, and media, we've already seen that in our country, is the first step. That's a milder version of the milder consequence. And then when that is taken over, they are able to influence the policies of country, of the region. And we see examples like steroid protest, Bhima Koregaon incident, or demand for Nagalim. I'm not going into the details of what these are because of time constraints. I'm presuming that these have been on media for so long and so strong that I'm sure all the people listening to this conversation, this talk, know what they are and what they had done to the country. So when taking over of education, entertainment, media happens, it can instigate people to do a protest, like a satellite protest or the Bhima Koregaon incident, the demand for a separate state, country, and the extreme step would be a Rwanda genocide-like thing. Now my question is that what is next for Bharat? Because the examples I have given are from India, they're not from outside India. So we've already seen that part. We've seen the prelude to that takeover of our education, slowly our entertainment, mostly our media. So we just are one step away from this, the Ravana kind of situation. None of us that are listening to this conversation would want to see Bharat go there. We do not want those pages in our history books. So I feel it's time for Bharat to check where she is and what can be done to prevent a Rwanda-like situation anytime in future for millennia to come. So my suggestion would be the solution at this point in time. I see at the government. I mean, of course, the solution has to come at the government level. The introduction of anti-conversion bill. A lot of people are talking about why anti-conversion bill is not required. But I would say it is required, and the time is now. Now, Article 25, everybody talks about Article 25 and right, the fundamental right to propagate religion. So the propagating activity, we're not against the Article 25 or the fundamental right of propagating religion, but that article has to be more specific. For example, propagating activity must be limited to churches. Preach as much as you want, indoctrinate as much as you want, but do it within the confines of your churches. stop going door to door. The door to door propagation, the street level propagation must be put an end to. Then change the wording of Article 25. Propagating must be differentiated from inducement based conversions, and inducement based conversions has to be made a punishable offense. The third thing is, the Supreme Court has already said this, that the Article 25 does not grant the right to convert, but one may transmit or spread one's religion by an exposition of its tenets. But as I said, what does preaching entail? What does promoting Christianity entail? It entails offending the civilization of this country, offending the traditions and beliefs of this country. Exposition of Christianity is just a small part in the act of preaching. And this has to be stressed, this particular point, that one may spread or transmit one's religion by exposition of its tenets. I would say only, with a capital only by the exposition of its tenets. And any derogatory remark, which I would say should be another totally different bill, which is the anti-demonization of the Indigenous Traditions Bill. The anti-demonization of Indigenous Traditions Bill, that must be brought into place, where any derogatory remark against Hindu traditions or deities, such as we hear this all the time, especially in the churches or street level evangelism, like Makali being called a bloodthirsty goddess, Ganesha being called the elephant god, the monkey god for Hanuman. So such remarks must be made an offense. Like in the case of addressing an individual by his caste have been made a punishable offense. Don't deities deserve that kind of respect? So any derogatory remark against a Hindu god or goddess must be made a punishable offense. And the Drugs and Magic Remedies Act of 1954, this must be applied to Christian healing. The act actually says, you go and look at this act, it says that any claims of any objects promoted as having magical powers is an offense. Promoting any object to be having magical powers to alleviate human problems must be made an offense. Now, what is Christian healing all about? They are selling handkerchiefs. They are selling prayer oil. They sell water, holy water, and all them to be, claim that these objects have miraculous powers and they can heal people. And the healing trades that go on across the country. All these things must be put an end to, and the Drugs and Magic Remedies Act, must be applied to them, against them. So this is not exhaustive. There are several other ways that the government can step in and control this, not because the Christian population is rising, but because it is definitely a threat to India's security. This is the reason I feel the government should step in and bring about these changes. At individual level also, I see a lot of activities that can be undertaken, like demand for these changes. Begin with making the demand for these changes in our constitution and bring these conversations to mainstream. Engage yourself, act with awareness, become aware of what is happening, become aware of what can happen, become aware of what should be done so we don't get to the situation I was just talking about. When you become aware, you know where we are going, you know where we are at today, which is very disturbing. You know where we are headed if we don't do anything right now. So there's a lot that can be done at individual level. First thing would be to wake up from our sleep and become aware, alert those that are still sleeping, and talk about it. Talk about it as much as you can on social media, and you can present your demands in a polite manner. So just do it. Just do everything in your capacity to urge the government to make these changes. So with that, I come to an end of my talk. Like I said, I could give you many more examples from across the country of how there is a rising anti-nationalist sentiment among Christians, no converts. But I didn't want to dwell much on those that particular topic, that particular aspect of this talk, because to discuss them, we'll have to discuss the context in which they have said those remarks, made those remarks. So that would take longer than the 30-40 minutes that Sangam Talks gave me. So Tanya ji, over to you.
Thank you so much, Esther ji, for that really eye-opening talk. I just have one quick question that I would like to put across. As you said, that we should make ourselves aware, we should wake up and we should politely put across to the government. Now we see things happening like the Gurgaon Mars issue that is happening, where they had to fight for so many days, despite having orders for not doing Mars against the system, and also people getting arrested from the Hindu community, and the other ones brazenly, doing, even though there is a Indian Hindutva, to say the government that is there, and also so there is a lot of things against you if you stand up and demand any of these things, or even if you ask politely, like recently a journalist Mahir Das, just because he criticized the Tabligh Jamaat, he's been arrested. So what exactly? I mean, we expected something with the 2014 dispensation that is coming, but we don't see the political will happening. And so I would like to hear your comment.
Like I said, I stress on this point that being polite doesn't actually mean you can be polite and you can still be firm. You can stand your ground. So politeness is just for the how you're presenting your point firmly. We've also seen changes. Like for example, if you look at the Shabarimala incident, I think Sai ji stepped up, and if that would happen, why not other things? But there's a way to do it. I'm not saying every social media warrior should go out and protest there on social media or use derogatory language to make things happen. There's a way to make it happen. Like, for example, I have given the historical precedent, I've given the example of how these statements are becoming mainstream conversation in Christian circles. I mean, using the national flag, making derogatory statements about Bharat Mata. They're not being held accountable. Begin there at least. So in your region, there's a pastor who has made a statement, doesn't make national headlines, but within the region, you can raise your voice and talk about it. We file a complaint. So the key here is to not just hush it up under the carpet, but to talk about it. Talk about it, share about it, make a conversation around it. And there are organizations now that are willing to step forward, like Legal Rights Protection Forum is doing a very good job of filing complaints about this anything, any small, big, any stray incident that occurs in villages, towns, cities across at least Andhra and Telangana, the two Telugu states. I think they've also done a few campaigns at the national level, against people at the national level. Get in touch with those people, at least make them aware of what's happening in your vicinity. So talking about it or urging the government always does not mean protesting or using force. But I do understand what you mean, when that person was arrested or killed just because he raised a voice against Tabligh Jamaat.
Thanks, Esther ji, for this wonderful talk. So, I mean, at the end, you showed us some of the government measures that the government can take. So, my question is, now there's also a lot of folks working on Ghar Wapsi, right? So they are bringing back the Christians back to Hinduism. So first thing is, I mean, how prominent it is, or I mean, I know these numbers don't count in open, but do you have any number and what is the rate Christians? I mean, what is the rate people are leaving Christianity, and also is this Ghar Wapsi also a solution to a certain extent to the problems that you mentioned? Because I mean, the government part that would be kind of a slow and painful process, right? The government route. So I mean, in the meantime, I mean, is this thing also solution to a certain extent to the problems that you mentioned? So what are your thoughts on that?
Yes, definitely, no doubt that if you wait for the government to take action, it might, it could be, we may not see changes in our lifetime. But the work that is happening at grassroots level, like I said, those numbers don't come up for several reasons. There's a risk in, actually, we don't know the exact number at what rate it is happening because we do not have a database. We haven't come up with any database like that, but the work is going on, and the organizations that are engaged in this kind of activity want to lay low for obvious reasons, and also to maintain a database or to put a number to it, you need to have a system in place, and we don't have the system right now. We don't have something like a Joshua project for to record this, to make this, to maintain this database. So, but yes, that is also one of the, not one of the I would say a great solution. If you know of any organization working in your region, I would actually recommend you to get in touch with them and do whatever you can, because what I have seen in working with interacting or working with grassroots organizations is people are willing to come back. They are vexed. You and I know that there is no miraculous solution to human problems. A human problem can only have a human solution. I'm not saying there is nothing happens by faith or prayer cannot change things. That's a separate discussion. But I'm talking about if you have cancer, one has cancer, one has to go to the doctor, one has to do whatever it takes. I mean, yoga, meditation, Ayurveda, modern medicine, whatever it takes, but they're all human solutions to those problems. You would have to go. You cannot just kneel down and pray and expect your cancer to be gone. So people are slowly beginning to understand that. They are beginning to see the reality that no prayer, no pastor, no church, no donation to the church is going to alleviate their problems. So it is on us now that we go to them and tell them that we are with them. Tell them that not all is lost, they can still come back. So these organizations are doing that task, and that is a great solution to this entire problem.
Madam Mr. Dhanraj, yours was an excellent exposition from a young lady. I'm here to hear. It is because you know both Hinduism and Christianity. You deserve a Padma Shri and Padma Shrimati. And my good wishes to you. My questions are after your suggestions to government. One, are the lists entitled to reservation after converting to Christianity? Related questions are, if answer to my question is yes, is not a reason for conversion. Second, related question is, if that is so, is such conversion available to illegal, and is it not present, and is the question of Lara in chat box? And is this not the philosophy that of Muslims? I request you and Rahul ji to present your lecture in brief in one page presentation provides solution. Thank you.
Actually, no. There's also a lot of work going on to remove reservations once a person converts, because when a person converts, he loses his caste status. He loses his caste. I think they all become BC. They come under BC. So whatever reservations BCs have, that only that can go to that person that is converted. But caste-based reservations cannot. They're not eligible for caste-based conversions. That's also a very big argument, especially in the states of in Telugu-speaking states. That has become a very big problem, and I think Legal Rights Protection Forum is also it's fighting individual cases in that aspect. They're not eligible for, especially people that I mean, caste is Hindu